And we're live. Good morning, everybody. How are we all today? I'm having a lot of fun today. I've been working on this Build a Robot project, and I'm very excited about it, actually. I think we need to be doing more art type stuff. Scratch has a fantastic ability it has a great little drawing utility into it, and then you start adding a little bit of coding to turn it into animation. You can make some really cool stuff. So usually I like to let you guys kind of explore how this is going to work as we build it and leave what things are going to look like as a surprise. But I want to give you guys a preview of what we're doing here. So here's my robot. As I was saying, you can make him talk. You can move him to the left or to the right. And you can make him change poses, which is really cool. And so we're going to be doing all of this. It involves a little bit of coding and a little bit of art. And so we're going to get started today just by doing a little bit of design work in here. You're going to learn a little bit more about how to manipulate tools inside Scratch here, how to draw, pick colors, pick line thicknesses, how to create animations, like this guy talking, for example. Watch his mouth. Right, and so we're going to be creating those kind of animations and the hands flapping and all that kind of stuff. But we have to start with a character to work on, so that's what we're going to be doing today. All right, so let's go, let's get going here, guys. I'm going to do my transition here. Watch this. All right, so we're not going to start with a robot. We're starting with a blank screen. I'm going over to my blank Scratch screen. We don't have a starter file or anything today because we are really literally starting from scratch. I've gone ahead and created a new character. I've called him Chromie, and that's going to be the nickname of my new robot. And I just did it. I created a blank file here by just going into the bottom right of the screen and selecting Paint. And that got me to the starting point here. And so we're going to be doing a lot of drawing here today. It's a little bit finicky, and I want you guys to keep up with me. As always, I'm going to be saving my file inside Scratch here. So if you don't want to draw it, and if you just want to follow along with what I'm doing, all you viewers on YouTube can always just go, I'm going to paste the address of that shared file into the description here, and you're going to be able to go in and just click on that link, and then you can go view my file anytime that you want to. So we're not doing any coding, but if you just start having trouble and your robot's not looking right, you can load up my robot and then proceed from here. So don't get frustrated and stop working. Just stick with me and keep working with my file, and eventually you're going to learn something. The important thing isn't following along during the lesson. It's watching me doing and learning what I'm doing while you're watching me. And so if you can afford to, if you have the, if you're able to switch back and forth from one tab to the other and do some of the work yourself, that's great. But it's more important that you learn how to do this so that after we log off, you can go on and start making stuff for yourself, which is what I'm really excited about. Okay. So let's get started here, guys. We're going to start drawing a head. We're not that worried about the size of stuff right now. I'm going to probably draw my head too big, and then I'll shrink it later, right? In the end, our goal is going to be, I'm going to zoom in my screen here a little bit. So let's try that. Okay, I'm going to leave it zoomed in. I finally figured out how to set my magnifier up so that it didn't wiggle around when I was when I'm magnified. So now I can actually show you guys on a bigger screen. I think this works a lot better. So our robot, as you saw over in the other view, is going to basically be basically from top to bottom on the screen, but we don't have to worry about that because we can always resize stuff in Scratch. Let's start with a little box. We're going to grab the box tool. Now I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit first, and I've probably told you guys about this before, but I want to make sure you're really clear on the difference between vector mode and bitmap mode. So let's do a little introduction here. I'm going to grab a box. I'm going to pick a fill color here. I'm going to pick probably a nice gray color. So I'm going to do that by sliding my saturation down and then dragging my brightness down. I'll probably get a nice gray sort of color from that, I would imagine. If I bring my color right down to 0, Yeah, now I'm just getting shades of black, right? And so this is great for the kind of gray we want for a robot. You can go with a different color for your robot. So remember, you don't have to duplicate everything I'm doing. You can make your robot gold or red or whatever you want. And in fact, I want to see what you create. So every step along the way, I'm going to show you how to do it my way. But if you have your own idea about how you want stuff to look, that is not a problem at all, okay? Now, we have a fill color here, and then we have an outline color. The outline, so right now there's no outline, and that's what that little red line across the outline means. So when I draw a little rectangle on the screen here, you're going to see, I should probably just make that a little bit higher so you can see the color and the fill. There, that looks good here. So when I draw a box here, you'll see it has no outline on it, right? It just has a gray box with no edge on it. If I were to pick like black here, for example, and then redraw the box, you'll see that this box has a black outline on it. How thick that line is really dependent on what this number is here. So this is the outline and this is the outline thickness. So if I change this thickness to like 4, for example, and then draw a line, it doesn't really look all that different, does it? Hold it. So that should be, let's try an even thicker line and see if that makes any difference. Let's try 10 or something. And then I will try drawing another box. There we go. Now you can see the difference very clearly, right? So this is no line, thin line, and thick line. So depending on what we want a robot to look like, we're going to choose different line thicknesses. And that's something you're going to be able to customize for yourselves, guys. So I'm not sure I really like this color. I brought the color down to 0. I brought the saturation down to 0. And now I'm just going to grab a nice light gray color. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys about bitmap mode versus vector mode, and this is blue button at the bottom lets you pick between them. I'm in vector mode right now, which means I can grab any object that I've drawn and rearrange it. I can pick it up, move it around, and do stuff to it, right? Which makes everything very editable, which is awesome for animation. Now, if you click on bitmap mode, you will turn this from an editable object into basically a photograph. I can no longer pick this up. I can grab it with a selection tool like this and draw a loop around it and move the entire thing around, but I can't do anything specific to it. The one thing I can do to it that's pretty cool is I can grab an eraser and I can erase around the edges. I can do color, I can still do color effects with my paint bucket. For example, I can pick a fill color like red here and fill this bucket up, but I can't adjust the shape of things anymore. Once you go to bitmap mode, you can't go back. Even if I go back to vector now, look at this. I can grab this object, but it's going to treat it all as one object. So the rule I'm going to tell you for creating animation today is never ever go into bitmap mode, okay? Because it's just going to mess up your thing. If you do accidentally hit the button, just hit the undo up at the top here, and that'll get you back up and running again. Okay, so we're going to start, as I said, with a nice gray box. I've dragged both my sliders over to the left, or sorry, all my sliders over to the left, and then my brightness I can adjust to get a nice shade of gray, though you can pick a different color there. And here we go. So I'm just going to grab an outline of maybe a thickness of 2, and we'll make it black. And now I'm just going to draw a little box. It's kind of a rectangle, so I'm going to grab the box tool and draw a box. It's going to be a squarish rectangle, but a little bit taller than it is wide. I think I might want a little bit of a thicker boundary on that. So let's try a thickness of 4 and see what that looks like. Is it changing in a live way, or is it, yeah, it does change live. Sometimes those little differences in thickness are a little hard to see. So I'm gonna, maybe we'll go with 5. There we go, that looks like a good thickness for our character. Okay, there's a nice starting point. Now we're gonna draw some googly eyes on top of him. So I'm gonna grab a circle tool, and now I again have to pick my fill and my outline. I'm going to leave my outline at the same thickness pretty well for the duration of this project here. So we're going to leave it at 5, but let's change our fill to white. So I'm going to go into my color picker here. I'm going to drag my slider all the way over to the right so I can get a white color. And then I'm going to draw a big circle. It doesn't have to be on top of this guy yet. We can move it later. So I'll just draw a nice big white circle. Now, as you might have seen in the preview, this robot has kind of weird eyes. One of his eyes is bigger than the other, and that's to kind of make it look a little funnier, right? We want this to be a little bit of a comedy thing. So Just play with it until it's where you think it should be. I think that's pretty good. Now we're going to make a second circle that's a little bit smaller for the other eye too. So let's draw a little weird eye like that. That looks pretty good. Now, when I'm drawing circles and stuff, you can see that I can squash it really tight like this in one dimension or the other, right? If you want to draw perfect circles, though, it's not good to try and guess what a perfect circle is. And that's why most drawing tools have this function that will let you draw a perfect circle or a perfect square every time. So I'll imagine this, I'm drawing a really narrow thing. I say, I want this to be perfect. All I have to do is hold the Shift key down and then start to resize it. Now it's constraining me, which means it's forcing me so that no matter what I do to this, it's always going to be making perfect circles. When I let go, I can go back to squashing stuff and deforming it. But holding that Shift key down is really nice when you want to create perfect circles. So again, I'm going to draw my second circle a little bit smaller than the first one. There we go. That's looking about right. And now I want to put a black dot in the middle of both eyes. I'm going to make them a little cross-eyed by default, though in my animated one that we're going to do tomorrow, we're going to have the eyes kind of flopping around and doing crazy stuff. So let's grab a black fill color, black. And I'm going to draw a small circle for the pupil of this guy's eyes. That looks about right. Now I want both pupils to be the same size, so don't draw two pupils here. That would be a mistake, so I'm going to make them a little cross-eyed. Let's zoom in on this a bit. I'm going to hit the plus button so we can see nice and close. To draw really accurately, we always have to use nice, tight magnifications like this. Then we have a lot of control over what we're doing, right? Okay, so I've got my first circle drawn here. Instead of drawing a second one and trying to guess at making it the right size, we're going to be copying it and pasting it. And that's what we're going to be doing a lot of today, because our robot is made of a lot of modular parts that should all be the same size. So his arms, each arm, for example, is made of two parts that are identical to each other. So we're not going to be drawing a new one each time, because that's how your thing looks amateur. If you want your guy to look professional, you have to keep everything within a specific tolerance, right? So I'm trying to teach you guys how to do it right rather than how to do it like a kid would do it, right? So if you want to animate like a grown-up, this is what we do. We don't invent stuff and drag it around and just do whatever looks great, whatever we think looks right in the moment. We use a little bit of science to make sure that everything is exactly the way that we like it. We zoom in close, we duplicate things, and we move things very precisely using the Shift key. And I'll show you later on how to use the Shift key to make angles right, so 45 degrees or like that exactly. So, okay, I'm going to copy and then paste. Now I have a second eyeball here. I'm going to move it over to this side. Okay, so now I can unzoom my screen. Now, when I move these guys, let's talk a little bit about moving characters. So I can draw a loop around it like this, and then drag everything in, and you can see that I don't have to bring both pieces individually. If I grab just the white eyeball part and move it, the black eyeball stays behind, and that's no good, of course, because we want this guy to stay attached. I just change the width of something somehow there. Let me undo. Okay, so we definitely want to grab a loop around both things. That's a little hard sometimes, because let's say this guy is right in the middle of here, and I want to move the eyeball, but not the head. Oh, I have a Cyclops robot right now. That's looking pretty cool. So now I want to grab just the eyeball and the pupil without grabbing the head. And how do I do that? I can't draw a loop around it anymore because I grabbed the head. Well, I can, and then I can unselect the head part by holding down my Shift key, and that lets me add or subtract to the selection, right? So if I click so that it's unhighlighted, now I can move the head around. Oh, I just made a mistake and deformed that. Every once in a while, you're going to grab something the wrong way and stretch it. And so the important thing to do is right away, let's just undo that and get back to where we were before. So I've got both these guys selected now. If I want to permanently keep these guys locked together so that I don't have to deal with moving them individually, I can click on this group button at the top of the screen, and that will make them work like one unit. I'll do the same thing to the other eye. Now, every time I click this, I'm going to move both of them simultaneously. It's not permanent. I can always go ungroup, and that will put them back in their individual parts again. So we're going to be doing that a lot as we learn how to animate this fellow. Okay, let's put our eyeballs in. I've got my left eye and my right eye. I want them kind of going off the screen a little bit, off the edge of the head a little bit, like so. And like so. That's looking pretty good. Maybe I might want this eye to be a little bit bigger. We do want, I'll make both eyes a little bit bigger. There we go, that's looking pretty good. So both eyes should be kind of sticking off the screen by around the same amount. And it should look a little bit like that. And then later on, we'll be able to move those eyeballs around and make it look like he's looking at stuff, right? But we don't need to worry about that now. Let's draw a mouth. I don't think I've left enough, oh, undo. I don't think I've left enough room for my mouth here, so I'm just gonna draw the head a little bit taller. And then I'm gonna grab a black fill color, black fill, and I'm gonna draw a rectangle. So I'm gonna grab my rectangle tool and draw a nice big fat mouth. And make sure it's centered on the head properly. You might want to get up nice and close so you can make sure you've got that all right. Good. Now, later on, we're going to be using animation tools to make this mouth flap around. Hello, I'm a robot, like that, right? But we don't need to worry about that right now because we're just getting our base character set up. Now, remember, if you're trying to center stuff and it's off center, you can try and do it with your mouse. But it's sometimes a little tricky, especially for kids who sometimes have trouble working on mouse. So remember that at any time when you're moving something, if it's highlighted, you move your arrow key. So I'm not touching my mouse anymore. I'm just going to move my arrow key to the right, and you see the guy flips one pixel at a time, to the left or to the right, or up or down. And that way you can get stuff positioned exactly where you want it to be without having to worry about having the fine motor control to be able to pop stuff into the proper spot. Okay, we're doing great here. Our robot's looking good. We're just going to give him a little antenna at the top. So I'm going to use the line tool right here. My line is 5, which is the same width as the tracing around him here. So that should work well. And I'm going to draw a line. You can draw a crooked line like this for your antenna, or you can draw a straight one, straight up and down like I did. I'm going to go with a straight one. I'm going to drag it right into the middle of the line there so it's attached. And I want to make sure it's in the middle. I don't think it's quite in the middle, so I'll just move it to the right with my arrow keys a little bit. And that's looking really good now. Okay, I'm going to give him an antenna at the top. I'm just going to draw a little circle. Now we're using a color scheme here where my robot is mostly gray, light gray in some parts, dark gray in other parts. But the accents, like the joints on his elbow and on his knees and on his hips, are going to be a color. I'm going to use green because that's the official color of Chromeworks. But if you guys want to do a different colored accent, or just completely do crazy colors for your robot and have everything a different color, that's all cool too. You can do whatever you like. So I'm going to go to my fill colors. I'm going to find a nice green. So I'm going to drag my color slider over to around 30 or so, which is a good green. It's at 31, but that's no biggie. And then I'm going to make it a little bit darker by dragging the brightness over until I get a nice kind of green color that looks a little bit like my Chromeworks logo. You can't see the Chromeworks logo on my t-shirt because my green screen is actually removing, well, so I have a green screen set up behind me, of course, and so my computer is automatically getting rid of the green. I don't know if you guys can see that from here. So here's the green on my Chromeworks shirt. It's supposed to be green, but because it's removing all the green in the picture, of course, you can't see the green there, and it's just transparent. What you're seeing is a blue that's behind me on the screen, on that cool falling numbers matrixy kind of thing that I have going there. Okay, so I've got my color set up properly. Let's draw a little circle. That looks good. Yeah, something like that. I'm going to hold the shift key down just to make sure I get a perfect circle. And then again, I'll go back to my arrow tool and use it to slide stuff around until it's perfect. Over to the right a little bit and maybe down. Let's see what that looks like again. It's hard to tell what stuff looks like sometimes when it's highlighted, so it's good to unhighlight it, have a look, and then if you want to slide it again, you re-highlight it. Okay, so our head's looking pretty good now. I think we're ready to move here. So I'm going to grab this whole thing now and drag it up to the top of the screen. I'm going to take a little break right now and talk to my audience on YouTube, and I'll be right back with the next step of this tutorial. All right, so we've drawn a head, and we're ready to go on the next step, which is going to be drawing a neck and a body for our guy. And then we're going to go back and forth making arms and legs and stuff. But we're making good progress here. It looks like everything's going great. All right, so let's get on to this next step here. All right, I'm going to zoom my screen here. One note, Maya, I can't see anything else while my screen is zoomed here. So if anyone says anything important on YouTube that you need to break in for, don't be worried about interrupting me, because I'm not going to be able to see what they're talking about here. Okay, so we're going to draw the neck next. So as I said, we're going to use two different colors for the main part of our body here. So the neck is going to be a darker shade of gray. So this is gray 1, and we're going to do a gray 2 color that's a little bit darker than the other one. Notice that my fill color has a weird, let me zoom in on that. It has a weird 3 color symbol here instead of the color that we picked. That's because we've clicked on a grouped object here, or the last time we selected something, we selected a bunch of stuff that was multiple colors. So it can't tell me what color it is because there's more than one color been selected here. And so that's what that little symbol means, in case anyone was wondering. So when I click on something, that will change colors to show me the current color. So right now I want to pick a darker color to use for my next box. So I'm going to go click on my box tool. Then I'm going to, let's zoom in again a little bit. Oh, I want to be able to see everything. There, that looks pretty good. So I'm going to click on my fill tool again here, and I'm just going to drag that brightness slider over a little bit to get a slightly darker gray color. That looks about right. And now I'm going to draw a skinny neck. Now you can have your robot have a skinny neck or a wide neck or a tall neck or a short neck. I'm going to go with a fairly short neck that looks a little bit like this. Now, I don't want my neck to be overlapping like this. This looks really amateurish. It looks a little bit like a tongue now, right? So the important thing when you're drawing extra elements like this is you can place it like this so that it's not going. But if you want to be able to slide his head around and do stuff to it, the better thing to do is to change the stacking order. So you guys, so we've been doing that a little bit in Scratch when we were making games and stuff, and you can control these things with coding commands. But here in the drawing interface, there's also commands that say front, back, forward, and backward. And so we're going to tell this neck to move to the back. And so now, no matter where we slide it, it will always still be behind the head. Now, Scratch does some funny stuff with layer stacking orders, and sometimes when you click on something, it will bring it to the front. And that's why we have to use coding commands to get it back to normal again when we're making games. But inside the drawing utility here, this is pretty reliable. So if once you move this to the back, it should stay at the back. And that way we're going to draw the body on top of it. Actually, now that I see these two next to each other, I don't think that this dark is dark enough because the contrast isn't big enough. I'm going to drag the slider over a little bit. There we go. That's looking a little better. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is draw a body for ourselves, and we want the neck to be behind the body as well, so we're going to be careful about that. I want the body to be the original color, not this dark color. So to change this box back to the original color, I'm just going to click on something that I know is already in the right color, like this box here. That's changing my selected color. And now when I draw my box, it will be set up properly. So let's draw a body that's just a little bit wider than the head. So look at where my mouse is. So I'm going to be dragging it out from about this point here to this point here. Now there's going to be, his body's going to be 2 parts. So I just want to go maybe this deep or so. Something that looks pretty close to a true square, okay? And then down below it, I'm going to do a second box. So let's just, let's actually make it, we want the box to be exactly the same width as this box. So again, instead of guessing, we're going to make a duplicate here. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to go paste. Well, actually, I didn't paste. I have to copy first. So let's go copy and then paste. And now these two things are exactly the same size, though the one was offset from the other one. So we have to get them on top of each other again. I'm going to try and position it manually and see if I can do it with my mouse. But if I'm not sure, let's try letting go and seeing it's still a little off, right? We want this to be perfect. We're doing a serious adult animation here, guys. So we are not going to put up with little imperfections like that. Let me click on it, and I will use my arrow button to slide it over until it is 100% perfect. Let me let go of it. So the only way to tell for sure is to click off of it. Yes, we are looking, well, no, actually it's a little off on the top here. You guys probably have a hard time seeing that at home. Let me zoom in again. And I don't know if you can see that there's a little bit of a fringe on the edge here. I'm going to zoom in really close to it and try going over to the right 1 pixel. There, now I know we're perfect. So that's the kind of perfection that I'm looking for from these projects, guys. Okay, so now I have this second box here. I want to fill it with the other gray color. I can't, I've already drawn it, so it's too late to pick the color by clicking on another box. So I'm going to use this eyedropper tool to make sure I have the right color again. So the eyedropper tool will pick up a color from another object and load it into your cursor here. So let's go do that right now. I'm going to click on my fill color, and down at the bottom is my eyedropper tool. I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to click on the gray part. You see how it gives me a little magnifying glass? And in the middle of that is the color it'll select. All I have to do is click, and then my fill color changes to the dark color, which is 0045. All right, now I can bring this slider from the top down. So I just want to reshape this bottom one. It's the right width now, but it's not the right height. So I'm going to drag it down until it's looking a little bit like this. There we go, and there's my body. Okay, looking good, guys. Now we're going to start drawing joints. We need 6 arm and elbow joints that are all going to be the same size. And then we need 2 slightly bigger ones for our hips. So first thing I want to do is pick a nice green color. I'm going to again grab the green from my paint bucket, and sorry, not from my paint bucket, from my eyedropper tool. I'll click in the very middle of this, grab that same green color. We don't want to be inventing a new shade of green for everything we're doing here. We're going to leave the line thickness the same. We're at 5. And now we can draw a circle that is a little bit smaller than our eyeball, maybe about that big. You can design this however you want. You can even go with a joint that's square if you want. You don't need joints at all, but when we're doing animation later, the joint is really helpful. Let me try, I'm just going to give you guys a demo. You don't have to draw what I'm drawing here. I just want to show you something. So I'm going to move that to the back. So let's say this is the arm, this is one of my arm joints, and I want to rotate it around. I'm going to show you more about this tomorrow, but if I want to change this, if I had 2 arms together and I want to rotate them, I'll show you what that looks like, and then I can rotate it like this. You can see it doesn't look that great. I'm going to undo. Oh, I want to do an undo and redo to get the 2 different shapes here so I can show you. So here's my arm, and then I'm going to rotate and move it. All right, so undo twice and then redo. Yeah, there we go. So you can see that when my arm is bent, it looks a little bit off, right? There's an imperfection here where the 2 things overlap each other. There are ways to get around that, but the easiest thing to do is just cover up that joint with a little kneecap, and that way, no matter how we rotate this, it's always going to be covered up with something. So that's why we're using these knee joints here. Now I don't need these arms yet. I'll draw those in a little bit. So I know in advance, because I've already drawn this guy, that I need 6 of these things. So we might as well just go ahead and copy paste these guys and make 6 of them already, and then we can start placing them. So let's go paste, 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 paste. Now I have 6 of my guys. Be careful when you're grabbing them not to grab them by the edge, right? If I try and grab this guy and move him and my cursor's in the wrong position, I can accidentally redraw this guy. And again, that will make our animation look really amateurish. So if you do that by accident, just undo and get us right back to where we were before. If sometimes when things are too small, it's hard to resize them or move them around that way, right? If I draw this guy really tiny like this, and then I try to move him around, I can sometimes accidentally grab that corner. And so when you're drawing really tiny things, sometimes you just have to use that keyboard command to move stuff around instead of trying to grab it by the corners, because it's just too hard to grab the middle without grabbing the corners. You can see here that I'm just not getting it. Every time I try to grab this and move it, I'm accidentally dragging it, right, which is no good. All right, I'm going to make one last copy of this because I just destroyed my last copy. Now I've got these 6 guys. Let's take 2 of them and place them on the shoulders. So we're going to center them on the shoulder, on the corner of the shoulder. So my middle this guy has this little crosshair here. I'm going to try and line that up with the corner of the robot's body, just like that. And I can do the same thing with the other guy as well. So, yeah, let's go and do that. I'm going to drag my screen over this way a little bit and make sure it lines up perfectly. Now, Scratch doesn't have any tools for making sure that two objects like this are at the same height. We want both these guys at the same height, and it's a little difficult to figure out. If you're unsure and you just want to double check, one thing you can do is just draw a little line. I'm going to hold down the Shift key while I'm drawing that line, and you see how it forces the line to be straight. So this will give me a good indicator whether these two guys are at the same height. And it looks like this guy is a little bit lower than the other guy. Can you see the overlap there that isn't on this side? So I'm going to have to move this up just 1 pixel. There we go. We're being really precise here today. Maybe 1 more. And it looks like he should go 1 more to the left as well so that he lines up with that line. Is that looking right now? So let's just unzoom again. And it looks like it's lined up to my line quite nicely. So other more serious graphics applications like Adobe Illustrator will actually have a button that says align. You'll be able to click on 2 objects and say align to the left, and then it'll take the 2 objects and push them into place so they're exactly on top of each other. We don't have that in Scratch, but there are workarounds, and that's just one of them that works pretty nicely. Okay, so we've got those 2 shoulders in place, and now we're ready to start drawing the arms. So I'm going to grab that gray color again. Let's just click on the dark gray at the bottom of a robot body. We'll load that color into our cursor here. And then we're going to draw another rectangle. I'm going to go with fairly short, skinny arms. And remember, our arms are going to be in 2 pieces, which means that we don't really need a ton of length on these arms. We'll try drawing it and see what it looks like, and then we can always reposition them if we have to. So I'm going to leave my first arm as a reference here because we're going to be using it for the legs as well. So let me draw what I think is a good looking arm here around maybe this thickness. And I'm going to leave this here so that I can make copies of it, so that all my arms end up being the right length. If it turns out that it's the wrong length, I'll delete this and replace it with something else. But so I'm going to go copy now, and then paste, and I'll leave that one arm there where it's not going to mess with me. Now I can twist this guy around using this little tool at the bottom here, and you saw me doing that a little earlier as well. I'm just going to drag it over like this and move it over the joint, and then move it to the back. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. Well, let's try adding the second arm joint, and then we'll see what it looks like. This elbow joint should be at the front, so I'll go to front. Then I'm going to make a copy of this other arm. Again, we don't want to draw a new arm every time because then the thicknesses will be all messed up and it will look amateurish. Move this to the back, and we'll just have him stretching his arms out kind of like this, in like a gunfighter pose, like that, exactly. All right, and that looks around the right length for an arm, right? I don't think I would want the arm much longer than that. The arm, when stretched out, should basically reach to the bottom of the hips, but that's including the hand too, I think. So to my eye, that looks pretty good, actually. Now again, we want this all to look beautiful and symmetrical. So what we can do now for the second arm, instead of drawing it, I guess I've probably made too many joints here because we don't really need to draw the second one. We're going to make a copy of it again. So let's, I'm going to grab my black arrow tool that I use for selecting stuff. I'm going to draw a box here that contains the elbow joint and the 2 arms, but not the shoulder, because we already have the shoulder in place here, right? So draw my little box. I don't have to draw over the entire shape. As long as my cursor is touching part of it, it will get selected. You see that? Now I'm going to go copy, paste. Now I have both arms selected on my, the other arm selected on my cursor. And of course I want it flipped the other way. So I actually have a button here that says flip horizontal. When I click on that, it will give me a mirror image of the original arm. And now I can position it where I want to. Let's move it to the back again. And there we go. We've got a fairly nice looking arm. Beautiful. Okay, so we're doing great here. I'll take another quick break and then I'll be right back to it. Okay, guys, what's happened in the chat? Everything good? Aiden has to go. Emil has to do homework. So remember, guys, if you're watching this on YouTube and you have to go, a lot of you guys have schoolwork to do nowadays, which is great. We want to keep you guys busy. But if you want to get back and watch the rest of the lesson, remember that almost as soon as I finish this, it will be this live streamed lesson that we're doing right now will be available on YouTube. And then I'm going to take the video that we filmed from this, get rid of all these talking parts where I talk to my classroom, and just turn it into a plain old, plain vanilla tutorial where you don't have to do any of this watching remixes and stuff. And so that comes out every day the following day at 9 o'clock. So yesterday's 9 o'clock video should already be live on YouTube, and that is our Wii video lesson, right? So if you want to watch that and not be part of this classroom and just get the tutorial, you can always log in at 9 o'clock every morning when I release a new Scratch video, weekdays, of course. Okay. Anyone else have anything to say in the chat at all? I'm gonna have a little sip of coffee and we can get going here again. All right, I'll just go back to the screen. Okay, guys, so we have our body done and our two arms and our head. We're getting pretty close. We're gonna have to do the legs as well. And then we're gonna be, and the hands, of course. Let's do the hands next. So let's get to it right now. All right, I'm gonna zoom in my screen, just like that. All right, so our hands are kind of like pincer hands. They're made of two different pieces that we're gonna put together. We want them to be kind of a wedge shape. So this is the first time we're not going to be using a perfect shape. We've been using perfect circles and perfect squares or rectangles up until now, but we're going to draw a shape that's a little different now. So I want my hands to be the same color as the arms. So let's, I'm going to leave this reference arm here for now, and let's grab another rectangle. So I'm going to click the reference one just to get my colors loaded up with the dark color. And then I'm going to grab a new rectangle tool, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle that's about the width that I want one of my fingers to be. All right, let's zoom in on it. Now, so we want our fingers to be kind of wedge-shaped, which means we want the top of this rectangle to be squished a little bit. How do we do that? Well, we're going to use a different tool here. This tool here is called the Reshape Tool, and what it does is create handles that you can use to squash stuff together. So if I grab this corner handle now and drag it in, you see I can use it to reshape what I'm drawing. I'm going to grab both those corners and I'll turn this into a parallelogram, or is this a rhombus? It's both, isn't it? Yeah, it's a rhombus and a parallelogram. My 2D math skills are a little rusty, guys. So one note of warning about this Reshape tool, if you click someplace where there isn't already a point, it will create one for you. That's sometimes useful. Like here, for example, I can click in the middle, and now I can stretch this out this way and create weird curved shapes like that. But if you do that accidentally, of course, you're going to end up messing up your image. So I'll show you a little bit more about this curving tool later on when we use our feet. But so if you accidentally create a new point like this, don't try and straighten everything out and work with what you have here. Just go back in time using the undo button until that point disappears from the screen. And then you go back and work on the original object here. So there's my finger, or it's a two-part hand, right? If I wanted to, I could even curve it in a little bit at the edge here. Actually, I'm going to do that. So I'm going to use that deformation trick I showed you here. Let's click right in the middle of the bottom part of this shape and just bring it up a little bit. Uh-oh, that didn't work properly. Let me undo. I think I created 2 points there instead of 1. So we'll undo until that point disappears. We'll zoom in a little closer here so I can be careful. Using my Reshape Shape tool, I'll click in the middle and then drag inwards a little bit like that. Just a titch. And then we'll make my fingers look a little cooler, I think. All right, so there's one of my fingers. Now I'm going to place it. So I'm going to grab it with my tool. So I'm back on my black arrow tool now. I'm going to bring this over here. It has to go to the back, obviously, so I'll move it to the back. And I'll rotate it around so that it's sticking out. It might be a little bit big here. Let me save my file. There we go. In case anyone at home is having trouble. And now I need to have 2 of these fingers, right? I don't know if I've left enough room here. I'm probably going to have to end up shrinking this guy a little bit. I think the fingers are looking a little bit big. It's best to shrink it before we get it into position here, because once we twist stuff and then start trying to reshape it, unexpected things happen. So we want to make sure we resize this thing while it's still facing straight up and down. Let me undo a step. Couple of steps until it's straight again. Now I'm going to go in and skinny it up again, just a little by dragging it this way. There, that's looking a little bit better now. Okay, so now I can twist this around and get it into the proper position. And then I'm going to make a copy of it, paste it down, and move it in the other direction to make my second pincer claw. Decraw. That's a reference to a movie that you guys probably haven't seen. Backwards. Whoa, that's still not behind. So let's go to back. And there we go. We've solved our problem now. Okay, I'm not sure whether I like the curvy end to those fingers anymore, right? The more I look at it, the more I think that's not really the way I want it to go. Well, maybe if we reverse it, if we make the fingers come out the other way. Let's go back in time a little bit here. So again, this drawing process is sometimes inventing stuff as you're going along, right? So here's my original shape. And this time I'm going to try reshaping it by pulling it out instead of pulling it in. Now let's see how that works. Make it curvy like that. And then skinny it up. There we go. I hear a cell phone ringing in the background. It must be my son's phone because it's sure not mine. Backwards, go to back. Okay, there's my first hand, or my finger, whatever you want to call it. I'll copy it, paste it, put it in the other direction, move it to the back. Yeah, that looks a lot better now to me, eh? What do you guys think? We might even want to put a little kind of joint in here, like you could put a little gray circle here at the back. There! I think that looks pretty good, eh? What do you guys think about that hand on the robot? Okay, so now we need to make a duplicate of this hand and attach it to the other side of the arm. So let's unzoom a little. I'm going to grab all 3 of the parts of that hand. I've accidentally grabbed the arm, which I don't want, so I'm going to hold down my Shift key and click on the arm so that it's unhighlighted. Now I have just this part here. Let's group it together so that we can move it independently now as its own piece. And then we will copy and paste. And let's bring this over to the other side. And we will zoom on this. So when I go zoom or unzoom, it usually zooms in on whatever you have highlighted here right now. So if I'm over here and I hit the zoom button, you see it zooms in on this side of the screen. And when I'm over here and I hit the zoom button, it zooms in on that side. It'll try to get you as close as you can, though sometimes you have to finesse it a little bit to get it set up properly. Okay, let me rotate this to get it into the proper position. Make sure it's moved to the back. And now we've got a pretty good hand going here. Looking good. Okay, so our robot is proceeding nicely now. Let's do our legs next. So I'm going to unzoom here. And we're going to make our legs a little bit bigger than we need a hip joint right now. Now look what's happened here. I've run out of space here. My robot is going to stretch right off the screen here. So now's the point where I think we have to shrink this guy and bring him down again. So I'm just going to draw a loop around the entire fellow, making sure that I get the top of his antenna. I'm going to make sure I've selected the entire robot. And I'm going to shrink him to such an extent that, so I'm grabbing the corner, and I'm just going to make enough room here so that I can do his legs underneath him. That looks like about the right size here. And we'll just center him in the image. Actually, bring him down a little bit so that on the game screen I can see his whole body. That looks pretty good now. Okay, we're good. All right, now it looks like my hip joint is probably around the right size now that I've shrunk my fellow. I'm going to stretch it a little bit because I want it to be a little bit of an oval shape like this instead of a perfectly round shape. So we're going to make that our hip joint. I'm going to move it to the back now. So I'm going to click on the Go to Back button and drag it underneath the other shape. And we're going to put about half of it behind the robot. We only want a semicircle here. And I'll move it in a little bit. And let's copy paste it again. And make sure I move it to the back. And make sure they're both at the same height. If I'm not sure, I could try drawing a line here. Let's draw a super skinny line. We'll make it just 1 pixel thick. And draw it along the edges here, holding it down the shift key to make sure it's a straight line. And now we'll just draw it down to make sure that it's perfectly lined up here. It looks like we did a pretty good job there, so I'm pretty happy with it. I'll delete that line, which we don't need anymore. All right, I think we're looking pretty good there. I think this hip joint might be a little bit big. I'm going to click on both of them, holding down the shift key. Now I have both of them selected, or I could drag a loop around both of them, of course. And I'm going to move them up a little bit. It's just being finicky now. Okay. All right, now I need some arms and legs. So let's grab another arm joint from here. Actually, I have one on the side that's already straight up and down, right? I should use that one because I want my legs to be perfectly straight. So let's make a copy of this guy and paste him. Oh, we've resized him now, eh? So we can't actually use this reference object anymore. I'm actually just going to make a copy of this arm then. We'll go copy, paste, and we're going to try to reposition it straight. Once stuff is crooked, you can't use the shift key to straighten it anymore. And that's one of the reasons I don't like taking crooked things and making copies of them, because you end up passing along that crookedness to the children that you're making here. All right, I'm going to make sure I'm going to pay attention to that grid on the screen here. Let me save my file. I'm going to pay attention to that grid to make sure that that it's lined up with this grid. Yeah, that looks pretty straight now. So I'm going to make 4 of these guys for my legs. So let's go make some copies. Copy, paste, paste, paste. Now I have my 4 leg pieces. I also want some joints here. So these joints are the wrong size now. I'm just going to delete them. I don't need these anymore. Don't need this anymore. We're going to take this joint and make a copy of it. Copy, paste. Move down here. And so now we just have to position our legs properly. So let's grab one leg piece. We'll center it here, move it to the back, take another leg piece, center it, move it to the back. Now we're going to grab some of these knee joints. Let's grab one of them, center it. Where are those copies that I made? Oh, I didn't copy the knee joint. I'll copy it now. Copy, paste. Let me zoom in my screen here so you guys can see better. Position that. So we're working nice and close up so that we can make sure everything's really accurate. Now we can go with the other 2 pieces of the arms and legs. Let's go down here. We'll grab those ones we've already made copies of. They're already at the back, which is nice. Make sure they're lined up. It looks like they're lined up with our grid here, with our little gray and white boxes. That looks perfect. All right, so all that's left is the feet. We've got our little robot running on roller skates, which you probably didn't notice when I first showed them to you, but I'll show you how to do that right now. So we're going to grab a box, another shape, kind of like the feet here. I'll just make a copy of this knee. Go copy, paste, and I'll move this down to the bottom. Now we want our foot to be a little bit bigger than that and a little bit stretched out. And we're going to do a reshape on this to make it look kind of wide at the bottom, wider at the bottom than in the middle. So let me show you what we're going to do here. So I'm going to make it a little wider than my knees, and I'm going to bring it. So I'm not going to bring it up yet. I'm going to grab my Reshape tool now. So our legs, we're going to draw a shape that's a little bit to the left for the left foot and a little bit to the right for a right foot, kind of like 2 different shoes in the way that they're opposites of each other, right? So I'm going to grab this Reshape tool at the top here. I'm going to move it up and to the left. So it's just shaped a little bit like that, like a crooked teardrop a little bit. There we go. That's looking pretty good. And now I want to make a copy of that. So I'll copy it, paste it, and then do a flip of it. So I'm going to go flip horizontal. And now I've got 2 legs that are opposites of each other. Now I can move this to the back, position it properly. Maybe a little bit like that. That's looking pretty good. I think the leg should be a little bit bigger, so we don't want the edge of the leg quite touching it this way. So actually I'm going to go back and reshape this a little bit. I'll make it a little bit bigger with my black tool. It just doesn't look quite right to me yet. Then I'll move it to the back. I'm going to give you guys a sense of what this should look like. Now that's looking a little better to me now. And now I can copy him, paste him, move him over here, flip him horizontally, move him to the back. So let's see what that looks like. Ooh, now my robot's too far to the bottom of the screen again. Let's move him up. I'm just going to draw a big loop around the entire body and move him up a little bit to center him on my screen. His feet seem a little bit close together, don't they? I'm going to take this entire leg and move it out a few pixels in this direction. I'm going to take this leg and move it out a little bit in this direction. That's looking better to me. The feet don't look quite right though. Need a bit more playing around. So I'm looking at these feet very closely, looking at like the amount of space here between the edge and the foot, and trying to make sure that they're both identical. So I'm just tweaking stuff with my arrow key until it looks just perfect. I think that's looking pretty good. Now we just need our little roller skate wheel. So I'm going to go grab a little circle. I'm going to fill it with black. We'll go grab our black tool here. There we go. And we're just going to draw a little teeny circle about that size. And we'll move it to the back. And let's move it behind the feet. And we'll put it maybe right here. Then I'm going to make some copies of it. I'm going to give him 2 skates on the front, on the one leg, and 2 on the other leg. So I'll copy this, paste it, move it around a little bit so they're separated enough so you can tell that they're both 2 different objects. Move it to the back. Make sure they look kind of similar to each other. The amount that they're behind the shape here should be pretty much identical. I'm going to play around with it a bit more. There, that looks about right to me. Now we don't want to reinvent the wheel here, literally, so I'm just going to copy those 2 wheels. I'm going to drag a little loop around them. Oh, or I'll hold down the Shift key and click on both of them. Then I'll go copy, paste, flip horizontal. Whoa! So I grab this by the corner instead of grabbing it by the middle. Let's undo. And this time try to grab it by the middle. I'll move it to the back and just start repositioning them until they look right. Actually, that's looking pretty good now already, isn't it? All right. So our robot looks like he's pretty good. You might want to tweak things a little bit. I think his arms are a little high up on the shoulder here. So maybe I'll move that down a little bit. I'm going to grab both arms so that I can move them simultaneously. Let me group that arm. And I'll group the other arm. Now when I'm moving, I can be sure I've grabbed the whole arm. I'm going to click on both arms now. I'm going to click on the first one, then hold down the Shift key, click on the second one, and bring everything down a little bit. That's looking a little better to me. Beautiful. So we've got a really nice little robot here that we're going to be able to reposition and animate. So basically, we're going to be going through here tomorrow and creating poses for our robot. So we're going to tell him to stick his arm straight up, for example, like this. And we'll be able to animate him going through these different poses as we go along here. And I'll teach you a little bit of coding that will allow you to control things like his eyes and his mouth movement. And we're going to create poses for his arms. And then he'll be all rigged up and ready to go for us to make video games or digital stories with him. So I'm really excited about this. So we're going to continue this tomorrow in part 2, which is going to be, now that we've built our robot, we're going to animate him, bring him to life like Dr. Frankenstein. Excellent. So I will catch you guys again tomorrow for part 2 of this little project, which is going to be animate a robot. Until then, have a great day.